when you talk to your neighbors, you can ask things like, hey, have you been at any other shows by Fan Expo or by whoever? Or
Mhm.
like, is this your first time in Boston? Because I've never been here before. And if it is, they'd be like, okay, cool, we can talk about that. Or if it's not, if they've been here before, be like, okay, well, where should I eat? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Booth. I'm Jade, and with me, as always, is my co host and producer, Heather.
And on this channel, we talk about wild stories from Comic Con vendors because we are Comic Con vendors. We have Jade has a booth, Tokyo Dog Designs. It is beautiful, it is colorful. And if you see us at any of our upcoming conventions, we have a list and a link in our profile. So go check that out, please. And we would love to meet you and talk to you about all things Comic Con because it's freaking crazy out there, but we love it. But today is actually a little bit more about podcasting, kind of. So we had an episode where we talked about, podcasters will come up to your booth or documentarians. Is that how you call them? Is that what you call them? Documentarians?
Um, I don't know if that would
Document,
be the word, but we can Google
right?
it.
I don't know.
I
It
think it
doesn't
would just
matter,
be people that have documentaries, but
right?
documentarians would be, I guess, suppose the verb,
Right? I
noun,
don't know.
verb.
If anybody knows that word, please write to us
Yeah,
so
be
we can
polite,
be
but yeah, let us know.
be like, you idiots. Okay, so yeah, people will come up to your booth and want to ask you questions, and we talked about how to have things ready for that. But if you are wanting to get out there and meet more people, honestly, I think a podcast is one of the best ways because everybody loves to, not everybody. I love to be interviewed. I love when people ask me questions about myself. And so there's a lot that goes into it, and it is something that you have to prepare for, something that you have to kind of learn how to do, how to interview.
And I've conducted several interviews. I've asked questions, and sometimes people will come to you with questions that they've already written out that they know how to answer, and sometimes they don't. The reason I feel like this is an important skill is this is not saying you need to go out and start a podcast. Although if you want to, you know who to find. Talk to Heather. If you
Award-winning producer right here. Come talk to me.
Yes, award winning. We want to put that out there. But it's also a great way to connect with people. I don't want to say network because that word is kind of gross,
Yeah.
but to get to know the other people around you. And I ask kind of similar questions. The one I do not like that I always get asked is, well, what do you do? Or what do you sell? That's not my identity. That's not what I do. That's not who I am. So I have a set of questions that I tend to ask. But if you're doing something like podcasting, like Heather is, or if you're, I see people all the time walking around events saying, like, okay, check it out. And they have their phones and they're showing things off and they're doing their own little thing. You can interview those people too as they come by your booth.
Hmm.
And some of those questions, I think Heather can really help you craft. But I think the number one question should be, Heather,
Oh, the number one question. Oh my goodness. Well, it really depends on what your motivation, what your goal is, right? Why do you want to interview people if you're doing a podcast? Obviously, it would be related to the theme of your podcast. We might have some interviews later on this podcast, and so we'd be asking obviously about conventions and how people handle that kind of stuff. And so if you're just at your booth and you're wanting to connect with people, you're wanting to go around these conventions and make those relationships, because honestly that's
that's what they
making
are.
relationships, yeah, with, oh my gosh, it's like the biggest thing, which I it's really easy for me. Really good at making friends. I'm just a very chill person, and I can small talk like nobody's business. And like, so I'm very good at making friends. I'm very good at connecting with people, but I've realized that not everybody is. And it's such a good way to really find that base, to really find those people. And especially if you're wanting to make this your business, if you're wanting to go to these conventions, you're going to have to start making those connections and building those relationships. And so to that end, finding out the best question that you can ask. Like Jade said, I don't also like the what do you do? I had somebody ask me that. I went to Chick-fil-A and the guy behind the counter, I mean, they're so friendly, freaking my pleasure, everything. And the guy was like, "What do you do?" And my brain broke. I'm like, "Uh, what? Like, have my chicken? What?" I'm like, "What are we doing?" It was just a very, I don't know, it's kind of an off-putting question because it's like, well, I don't know. I do life. I'm a
Like
human.
this moment, what do I do?
Yeah,
I'm paying you for my chicken.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's
it's a
very
very
strange.
off-putting question.
Mhm.
And the other one that's kind of greasy and weird is what's your passion? Because you know it's a sales pitch.
Yeah,
What's your passion? And I always want to be
because
like,
I
what,
can
for my
help you with
husband? Or like, you know,
it.
like I
Sexy
always want to
times.
ask them something, yes, naughty, because it's a stupid question, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
So what I like to ask other vendors, one of my favorite questions when I'm next to people and I want to connect, I always introduce myself. And I always say, like, hey, if you are here by yourself, I don't assume that they are because that can also be a dick move. Like, hey, if you're here by yourself, I'll be happy to watch your booth while you go pee.
Mhm.
And they'd be like, oh, that'd be great. Thanks. I'm like, can you just give me like a 30-second pitch on what your booth has so I can tell people while you're gone?
Yeah.
That's how I connect because then I learn what they think about their product and what they talk about. And lo and behold, because of our culture, people will then ask, they feel obligated to ask about you. Or they'll say, like, yeah, I can totally handle that for the same. Or, well, I've got somebody coming. I'm sure they'll watch your booth for you. Like, oh, awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And that's the first thing that you get started with talking
Yeah.
is starting by offering that olive branch. Now, I've had some people turn me down, and that's okay. And a lot of other vendors, they're introverts. They don't
Yeah.
want to chat up like Heather. I'm an introvert. I'm a thinky introvert, but I am an introvert and I don't want to chat all the time. Although when I talk to Heather, we can talk literally for hours. We talked all 6 hours to Albuquerque nonstop, but she's good at it. So, and coming from a place of like, as Gary calls it, he's our coach. Gary calls it the no agenda. You're not
Mhm.
asking what somebody sells to see if you're in competition or if they're a good neighbor or if you've seen them somewhere else before. Those are not good reasons to ask somebody, even
Yeah.
if that's what you want to know. I sometimes want to know who's going to be there if I had conflict with them. I've had major conflict once, and that was handled. And we'll talk about that in another episode.
Mhm.
But when you talk to your neighbors, you can ask things like, hey, have you been at any other shows by Fan Expo or by whoever? Or
Mhm.
like, is this your first time in Boston? Because I've never been here before. And if it is, they'd be like, okay, cool, we can talk about that. Or if it's not, if they've been here before, be like, okay, well, where should I eat? Or, things that you would find actually to be helpful.
Yeah.
And based off their responses, you can figure out real fast if they want to talk to you, if they want nothing to do with you, or if they're shy.
Mhm.
I've run into all three.
Mhm.
And somehow, I don't know if it's like because my eyes are giant. If you're watching this video, you can definitely see like how big my eyes are. But people will warm up to me. Um, and if I don't want to talk to you, if I do not like you, you get very curt, short answers from me that are very direct. Or I put in my headphones and I pretend that you're not there. So, um, Heather, when you have people that have their own podcast or want to interview other people, or if they have people that come by their booth and you really like the cosplay and you want to interview them for, your whatever it is that you want to do, even post on social media.
Mhm.
After you have consent, which very important, ask for consent.
Yes.
Cosplay does not
Ask,
equal consent.
ask. Yep.
After that first initial question, you said to relate it back to your booth or your product or something like that.
Mhm.
How is the best connector for that without coming off like, uh,
Salesy.
yeah, like the guy that did ShamWow, like ShamWow here. Let's talk about, how he always did that. It was so weird and he yelled. Don't yell at me ever. I will end you. Um, how do you tie in your product? If we're talking widgets, let's just pretend with widgets. How would you tie that in a conversation in a question?
Hmm. Wait, widgets? What?
Widgets is a term that people use when you talk about business. Widgets are just a thing, whatever that thing is.
Oh,
So let's
whatever
say
that. Okay.
if you have 1,000 widgets for $10 a piece, what should your business plan look like for widgets? It's something they use in business school.
Oh, okay. See, I'm like you said, widgets. I'm picturing like a website where you have to like put the widget on the side, and I'm like, I don't.
Oh, I suppose
What
that's
are
what
we
those are
talking
now.
about?
No, widgets is an old term, like back in my day, like super old.
All right, cool. Good to know. That was, I'm like, what are we talking about now? Who's at a booth selling widgets? Okay.
So I'm glad I
Anyway.
covered that because there's going to be a lot of people that were confused. So yes, unless you're old timey like me and have talked to old timers, a widget
Yeah.
is a thing or a product.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah. So like you talked about how you're doing this with no agenda, right? You do want to relate it back to your booth because obviously you're there for a reason. You know, you are wanting to connect, but also you do want to make some money, right? I mean, that's why you have this booth. You don't want to, have a deficit at the end. And like there are ways to naturally bring it back to your booth. I mean, obviously, if you're standing at your booth, you can be like, "Hey, we thankfully for you, you have a pin that's magnetic." And so pretty much everybody who has cosplay, we can be like, "Oh my gosh, look, our pins are magnetic," and they won't hurt your cosplay. And people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." Um, like it's there are natural ways to do that, and you'll notice that in a conversation where you'll be talking about the cosplay, you don't even know what it is, and they'll just be so excited about it, and they're like, and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I actually have this perfect thing that matches your dress or something. Like, do you want to feel it?" Thankfully, again, with Jade, she has a lot of very sensory things, and so it's really easy to be like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" If you're an artist, if you have paintings, be like, "Oh my gosh, I actually did a character from that anime." I don't
Mhm.
know why I keep going back to animes. I know nothing about anime. Um, it's just like the one that pops into my head. Yeah, you can be like, "Oh my gosh, I actually did this one." Another great thing to do. This is really silly, but have you ever watched Miracle on 34th Street? This sounds really random, I
Yeah,
know. Yeah, but
yeah.
there's that one point where the Santa Claus, right, who apparently is the real Santa Claus. It's a really cute movie if you haven't seen it. It's adorable. Um,
Spoiler alert.
he actually, oh right. Well, hey, it's like 100 years old, so no, not
Back
that
when
old,
widgets were
but it's
talked
very old.
about that old.
Exactly. Anyway, so the Santa Claus is like, "Oh, they don't carry that toy here, but they actually carry it at the other store." And of course, all the like managers start freaking out, but then they realize, all the moms are like, "That's amazing that you would put like my needs above your own. Like, I'm gonna shop at the store forever because you guys like actually showed that you cared about me." So if you're able to do that, be like, "Oh my gosh, I saw your character in that person's painting. Like, go take a look at that." That sends a huge message. It may not always come back to you, but they will remember that. They'll remember being like, "Oh man, like that was really nice. They weren't just trying to sell to me. Like they
Mhm.
were truly interested in what I was interested in and wanted me to have a good experience." Like that's part of what you're there for, right? The people that are coming to these conventions, they want that experience. They want to be
Mhm.
around. The first time I went to a convention, I was like, these are my people. Like,
Yeah.
my gosh. I mean, man, I was like, wow, I didn't know. I mean, it was Denver in July. So I was like, I didn't know people could smell this bad. But like, they were so, it was very smelly. Everybody's so sweaty. But like, it was so cool. Like, everybody was just having fun, and there were the occasional people that are like, you I don't know, you shouldn't be wearing that cosplay because you're not the right, I don't know, weight or whatever. Like there's always people like that, but most people were just like, look at you. I had a dress on. It wasn't a cosplay, it was just like fun. It kind of looked like a fairy dress, and like I got so many compliments on it. I'm like, my
Yeah.
goodness, like people are so nice and they're so like fun and welcoming, and part of being a booth vendor is that it is giving that experience as well. And I will say, not a lot of vendors are great at that, which is fine. Like, a lot of
Surprising
vendors
though.
are,
We're
yeah,
in
but a
customer
lot of vendors,
service.
yeah, but a lot of, I mean, we're around the artists, and a lot of artists are very introverted and they kind of like don't want to be here, and it shows.
Mhm.
And like,
This is something I hate though when you go by someone's booth and they're just like, and they
yeah,
don't even look up
like,
at you.
yeah, like, do you want to be here? They're just down on their phone, or they're just like,
And they don't look at you until you talk to them. And even when they look at you, they're like, can I help you?
like you're inconveniencing them.
Yeah. And I'm
And
like,
it's,
hey, what's up, bitches? Come over here. Come touch
come talk
things.
to us. Even
Yeah.
when we're like exhausted and we just want to go eat or sleep, and
Yeah.
we're like, come here. But you're part of that experience. So make it about them, because I mean, at the end of the day, these people are paying your bills,
Yeah.
right? And like,
And
good.
I was going to say, and one of the things that's really important about knowing how to interview is when you need testimonials.
Mm,
Having an actual testimonial of somebody who loves your products or loves your paintings can go a really far way, and it's something you can absolutely add into your Shopify page if you're using Shopify or Etsy or whatever you happen to be using, or your website. You can also utilize it in your social media. But listen, really, and this is why you have to like be there and ready to work and pay attention. Listen to what people say about your products. I had somebody who was dressed up as Sailor Moon who bought one of my trans pins, and she said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Nobody ever has this type of whatever." And I was like, "Hey, do you mind saying that again? Can I record you talking about that? Can I just grab a testimonial? I don't really have any." And she was just like, "Oh yeah, hooker, let's do this." And so she flicked her hair so she really looked like good. And then she started talking about why she liked it and compared to other things that were out there, why she bought mine.
Mhm.
And I have that testimonial. I put it on Instagram because it was so funny. I think it's on TikTok too.
I think so.
And now I can also add that to my website. So the questions I asked them beforehand was like, what was so different about this that you felt it was worth your money?
Mhm.
That was the question I asked. And just let them go, let them talk. Nice thing about video is you can edit it. And I guarantee you in this podcast, you see a lot of edits because
Mhm.
we are not perfect.
No.
And especially me. It's Heather's great. I'm the one that
It's
has
usually Jade.
problems. It's mostly me. Yes. I'm the one that fucks this up the most. And thank God that she's willing to edit it. So think about the questions and relevance to your products or even
Mhm.
what they say. Listen to what they say and then ask them, hey, can I just grab a quick testimonial? Most people will say yes.
Yeah.
It's rare that they don't because they want to support you.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you have a specific question. What makes
Yeah.
this different that it was worth your money? Because if you oh my gosh, because I've worked for many clients who are like, gather testimonials from my people. And I'm like, when you just put out to people, hey, can you give me a testimonial for this? I mean, I get that. My mind goes blank. I'm like, I don't know what to say. So you give them something specific, like, what about my product? Why did you like my painting so much? Is it and you can get even more specific, be like, is it
Mhm.
because of the feel, is it because of the colors, is it because, or even if coming up to your booth and being like, why did you come up to my booth, what brought you here,
Right.
just saying stuff like that, because that gives them more of a prompt
Mhm.
than just, why do you like me? Oh god,
Yeah.
what?
And you don't want emotions with some of the stuff of like, oh my God, Heather is just so funny. Heather is so nice. Heather is, it's not about that. Like, why do I work with Heather? Why do I trust her with this podcast? I trust Heather because she can get it done. She's prompt, she's on time, and she's detail oriented. And these are all things that I need to have a successful podcast.
Mhm.
I don't say like how funny she is and how she's like my best friend and how we've
Those are
known
just
each other
perks.
forever. Those are perks. And that's something I could add to the end. So when you ask people about, like, I suppose the one exception would be for some of the things that evoke an emotion. Like, what did this painting mean to you when you saw
Mhm.
it? You can add emotion into that, or even with your products, but we don't want to be like, oh my God, I just love it. It's so great. Love is such a thrown around word
Mhm.
that when you want something specific, and even when you talk about books or authors, like
Mhm.
what captivated you with my book?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I felt like I was in the shoes of the character.
Yeah.
I felt their pain. I felt, you can say things like that at that point that makes sense. But make sure that you do something more than slay, love, was the best.
Yes,
Like,
queen.
yeah, like yas so much. Like just add more to it. It's not like you can't say that, like, oh my God, yas, Heather is the best, and let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Like you can say that kind of stuff, but just like I love them. They're so nice. I
Yeah.
love being told that I'm nice. I think because I work so hard at it, so that I make people feel welcome at my booth. I get tipped all the time because I'm friendly. And I'm not looking at my cell phone, I assume. But I try really hard to make people feel welcome at my booth, not just so that they buy things, but so that they remember me and remember us.
Mhm.
I'm not a perfect fit for everybody, and I know that. That's okay.
Mhm.
I don't mind that. Actually, the way that I tell people that no one can be 100% liked is with this question. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite ice cream if you could only choose one, vanilla or chocolate?
Chocolate.
A room of 100 people will not agree. And it's
Right?
fucking ice cream. So when you think about things that are in any way difficult, you will never have the whole room.
Yep.
And I know that I'm not going to have the whole convention. I'm
Yep.
suited for some people. Chocolate is my answer as well. Unless the
I
throughput
mean,
floats,
that's
then
the
it
right
has to be vanilla.
answer.
It is the right answer. Um, and if you like vanilla, I'm so sorry I left you out. I love vanilla and root beer floats, so we're friends again.
Vanilla is
Um,
good, but chocolate's better. Anyway, wow.
yeah.
We're gonna get a
Anyway,
lot of
just to
hate
know that
now.
you won't, You won't have everybody, but when people say that you're nice, when people say they like your products, just ask them if they'll be willing to do that. Do be careful. Try not to get anybody under 18 without parental consent.
Yes.
You do get a lot of teenagers coming up to your booth and they'll say it's okay, but they technically probably can't say that for your business. And you don't want to get in trouble with the parents. So I try to get testimonials of people that I know that are 18 and older.
Yep. And remember, this is a
Cautionary tale.
muscle. Like, it's something that you have to practice. Like, don't beat yourself up because you're like, that was the most fucking awkward question I've ever heard in my life. Like, don't worry about that. You'll get better, but you gotta try. You gotta practice. And if you're not me and I can strike up a conversation with a freaking log, then you're gonna have to you're gonna have to try.
God.
You're gonna have to put yourself out there. Getting yourself out of your comfort zone is good in some places, not for everything, but like just try it because it will come easier, but you have to start.
Well, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, and a special thank you to Nerd Girl Podcast for sponsoring this episode. We'll see you next time.